Hey everybody, this is my T-bar tank, and speaking of my T-bar, there he is. I've actually been standing here for several minutes waiting to get a good look at him. If you see those two little tiny white spots on the very top most point of his notchal hump, that is about all that is left of the hole in the head disease that I was having issues with this fish. I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago I noticed some marks on its forehead, and I thought originally that it was just an injury, but some viewers pointed out that it really did look like hole in the head. I did a little more research and I came to the conclusion that it did indeed look like hole in the head disease, and so I started treating for it. And the only way I treated for it was simply by doing a little more tank maintenance than I'd been doing regularly on this tank. I'm sort of notorious for letting my nitrates get high and my organics get, up there without doing a lot of water changes on my tanks overly frequently. I also have very heavily stocked tanks as a rule, and so I just started staying on top of it a little more. I do have a sailfin pleco in this tank, and it just creates so much waste that I've actually been in here doing water changes a couple times a week. Nothing major, but I've just been in here doing a gravel vac enough to get all of the poop off of the bottom. And you can see down at this end where I can't really get to it as well with the gravel vac, you can see some has accumulated back there. But my power head also moves everything around, so I tend to have it accumulate at the far end, and that allows me to vac it out of there a lot easier. So that's really, honestly, all I've been doing as far as treatment on this tank goes. I've just been keeping the poop vacked out of it as much as I can, and as a result, I'm also doing a little more frequent water changes than I used to. So 2 days ago, I want to say, the day before yesterday, I did maybe a 15% water change. I don't know if you can see that snail back there, but I got a snail up in the Anubias. That's why that Anubias is so clean, or one of the reasons that Anubias is so clean. Got a nice little cleaning crew in this tank. Here's my T-bar again. So a couple days ago I did a water change on this tank, and it didn't amount to more than maybe a 10 to 15% water change. Again, it was just enough to get in there and vac all of the poop up off the bottom, and by the time I had got done doing all that, I was done the water change. That was my only purpose. I wasn't really worried about how much water I took out of the tank. So that was maybe, I don't know, we'll say we brought the water level down to about here, a couple inches off the top of the tank, and that was 2 days ago. So I checked the nitrates afterwards just to see, and they were about where I expected. They were still nice and bright red, and this is after the water change. And remember, this is also after I've been keeping on top of the water a little more frequently. I still, a couple of days ago, had nitrates that were up in the red, and yet we're still seeing my T-bars hole in the head disease clear up. Now, I will say the color is just gone out of this fish. This fish used to be so vibrant and purple and beautiful, and it's just really not anymore. It's just sort of washed out and flat and grayish color. This used to be a stunning fish. I don't know if disease and illness is part of that. I don't know if lack of a mate is part of that, but the color in this fish is pretty much gone. Don't know whether that's related to the hole in the head disease or not, but I did think it's worth noting. So at any rate, we're watching the hole in the head disease clear up. I mean, it's almost gone. We've got those two little white spots left, and that's it. And yet I've still got nitrates up in the red, and I've done no other treatment. I haven't put any kind of meds or anything like that in there. I haven't even changed the diet. Just been making sure I put more food in there, believe it or not, just to make sure everybody gets plenty. And I've got the algae wafers on the bottom so that there's a variety of food. I guess I've been mixing it up a little bit in terms of occasionally I've put some crumbled up freeze-dried krill in addition to the normal flake food I normally put in there. So not a lot in the way of changing up the diet even. I've really only just been sort of vacuuming the poop out of the bottom. So tonight I did it again, and tonight I did a fairly big water change. I actually brought the water down to about here, and did maybe a 30%, 40% water change, and I checked the nitrates after that. Now keep in mind, I just did a water change 2 days ago of about 15%, and then tonight, after that big water change, I checked my nitrates again, and I know this is not a really accurate way to look at it with the light behind it and so on and so forth, but you can see I'm in the upper orange range now, and that's actually lower than I was honestly expecting to see them. I really expected it just to be red again. Every time I ever check my nitrates in any of my tanks, it's just red. You know, I don't know if it's a varying degree of red. It's red. It always is red. So for me to actually finally have worked it down to where I'm dark orange, you know, I'm probably sitting right around that 40 parts per million, you know, that sort of magic number that everybody shoots for in their tank. So I have been gradually reducing the organics and the nitrates in this tank. And I think that probably has been benefiting the condition here, benefiting the T-bar's hole-in-the-head disease. And the reason I talk about this is simply because hole-in-the-head disease is really not very well understood, and the treatments aren't really understood, the causes aren't really well understood. So I made a point of not really panicking and doing a whole lot of frantic treatment to try to do anything for this fish. I just got on top of the tank maintenance a little better. I got the organics down a little bit. I got the tank cleaned up a little bit. And I've just been kind of waiting to see if the fish doesn't recover from whatever's going on. Now again, I'm still a little concerned about that no color, but that's been gradually fading over time. I've noticed over the last year or so, this fish has gotten less and less colorful. It's gotten less and less outgoing and active. You know, again, the discussion about the nitrates and the high organics, while I always say that they're not going to kill your fish right now and overnight, and you don't have to panic about doing your water change, long-term exposure to high levels of organics does take its toll. It does, you know, affect the health overall of the fish in a vague sort of long-term sort of way. So are we seeing some of the results of that? Is this what a fish after years of living in high nitrates looks like? Versus would it be still vibrant and bright and colorful if I had kept the water pristine all these years? I don't know. I really don't. Again, could it be lack of a mate that is causing this fish to look all sort of washed out and not have a lot of color? I don't know whether the hole-in-the-head disease is related to the washed out color. Not really sure. I've never really experienced hole-in-the-head disease before. And I've only just been now keeping fish long enough that I've had fish that I can say have sort of been through their lifespan, and I can say I've kept this fish for years now, and I've seen it change over the course of its life. And while this fish is nowhere near the approaching the end of its lifespan, I have had it for several years, and I have watched it grow and change. And so I'm now possibly beginning to see the effects of long-term exposure to high organics. You know, again, you know, your fish aren't going to die if you're going on vacation this weekend and you don't have time to do a water change tonight. That's not anything you need to worry about. But the overall idea of just keeping on top of your tank maintenance is always a good idea. So I just want to reiterate that I never ever want to try to convey the idea that having high organics and high nitrates is acceptable and fine for your fish. I always just try to explain to people not to panic about it. Your fish aren't going to die overnight because your nitrates got over 40 parts per million. And there are plenty of people out there who have fish that live for years and years in nitrates that are well over 100 parts per million. And this T-bar and these angelfish, I mean, obviously the angelfish aren't lacking in any color, and none of the other fish in this tank are lacking in any color. But this T-bar just doesn't look fantastic anymore. I'm not really sure what's going on with that. So the idea of the high nitrates, the high organics, that sort of thing is out there. You know, it's something I'm thinking about. It's something I want to talk about. And it's just kind of interesting to see how this hole-in-the-head issue is clearing up despite still being up in the red. You know, just bringing the organics down a little bit slowly over a couple week period, is that really just enough to make hole-in-the-head disease go away? I don't know. You know, So just some food for thought, not really any real point to this. I just kind of wanted to do an update on my T-bar and let everybody know that the hole in the head disease is sort of clearing up. And since, again, I'm not really experienced with this, I'm just kind of throwing my thoughts out there as I go along. So I'm certainly, would enjoy hearing your thoughts. Leave a comment down below and let me know what you think about what I've been talking about, and whether or not you think the high nitrates have an impact on whether there's hole in the head disease, or whether my little water changes have been clearing it up, or it's just one of those things. There's some people that argue that, just sometimes it clears up, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe I just got lucky and I didn't get a bad outbreak of it or something. I really don't know. But it's clearly getting better. It's clearly going away, and I've got less and less to worry about as far as, that hole in the head disease getting worse. Now all I got to do is worried about whether or not the color's ever going to come back in the fish. So anyway, make sure you're subscribed. That way you won't miss anything. I know we keep looking at my angelfish, but this is my T-bar tank, or at least that's what I call it. So make sure you're subscribed, as I said, and that way you won't miss anything else I got coming up. Thanks again for watching this one. Sorry it was so long-winded, but that's how it goes sometimes. So I'll see you in the next one.